Also from Tel Aviv today, we have the journalist Jotam Confino. Jotam, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you.
Hello there. What would you say is going on from your perspective? One of the things that I've been saying on the programme so far is it's not necessarily guaranteed that the way Israel is going to wage this war is going to be on the ground. It sounds as if there's some kind of other strategy in place. I don't know what you're observing.
Very, very surprising if Israel is not going to actually go in with soldiers to launch a ground invasion. That's going to be very surprising because that's what everyone has been waiting for the past 11 days. And I've been in the south for the past 3 days in the city of Sderot, which is very, very close to the Gaza border, as close as you can get. And all you see is military equipment, tanks, convoys, soldiers everywhere, all of them mobilizing, all of them going to the border. So everyone is expecting this ground invasion. So the fact that the IDF is now saying there might be some other surprise is surprising in itself, because they said something completely different a couple of days ago. They said, we are ready to launch a ground invasion and we'll attack from the sea and from the air. So again, it could have something to do with the fact that Joe Biden is coming to Israel tomorrow. Maybe they're trying to just confuse Hamas, but every day that they wait with going in, of course, that's good for civilians, but it also is good for Hamas, because Hamas is preparing now for this ground invasion and they are ready to fight Israeli soldiers when they come in.
And when we hear, as we just heard Avi Hyman saying, this is not something that Israel is going to lose, this is not something that is a conflict that will go round and round in a cycle, this is Israel effectively eradicating Hamas. They are going to finish it. It's going to be laid waste. That's going to be the end of the terror organization. Do you share that confidence that that will happen, or do you feel much more apprehensive about it, because it seems a pretty complex thing to do?
Absolutely. I respect him, but I don't share his analysis. Of course, I agree that such an entity, a terror entity like Hamas, shouldn't exist. We've seen the atrocities they commit, not only now, but during the second Intifada. But you can wipe out Hamas physically from Gaza. But you have plenty of Hamas supporters in the West Bank. Some of their leaders are in Qatar, Lebanon, Syria. Hamas is like Islamic State. It's an ideology. It's not, you can't kill an ideology. You can maybe try and educate people, but you cannot physically go in and kill Hamas. You can do it, but the ideology will continue. So even though I agree that, of course, something has to be done, and yes, it would probably be better to remove Hamas absolutely from Gaza. There's no doubt about that. But to think that you can eradicate the ideology, I think, is simply not true, unfortunately.
So if it can't be done, what do you fear will be the outcome of whatever happens next, whatever kind of attack?
I think, first of all, I think that Israel is going to have to occupy. I'm not saying they should. I'm saying this is probably what's going to happen. Israel will have to probably occupy Gaza after they have eradicated Hamas, which they will physically, like I said. And then they'll have 2 million people on their hands, and they'll have to administer like they do in the West Bank until they figure out what to do. Because Israel is not, well, some at least are not interested in reoccupying Gaza. Many Israelis do not want to do that. So either you're going to have to install the Palestinian Authority, but again, will they accept that? Will they accept to be collaborating with Israel in such a way? Also unlikely. So there is no good end game. And Israel has also said, we're not even there yet. We haven't actually thought about what the end game is, because we were taken by surprise. Now the first goal is to just eradicate Hamas, and then we'll see what happens. But it will be bloody. Lots of people will die. Hamas, of course, will die. Islamic Jihad, most of them are going to be wiped out. Maybe some will manage to flee or hide behind civilians. And then, of course, a lot of civilians will die, and also Israeli soldiers. This is not going to be costless for Israel. And Israel also has said several times, this will be bloody for us and for them. It's a costly war, but we're ready to pay the price, because what Hamas did is unacceptable, and it cannot happen again, ever.
In breaking news, Jotam, as I've been talking to you, we have heard that the Egyptians have said the Rafah border entrance to Egypt is open. All day, the news has been it's not open, and, would-be refugees from Gaza are amassing there, and they're not being let in. Neither is any aid, neither is any medicine, neither is any water. we're asking, why would the Egyptians do this? Why would they behave in this way? But we've just been told that they have said that it is open. That would make an enormous difference. There's an awful lot of space, isn't there, in the Sinai Desert for a start?
Absolutely. First of all, that is breaking news, and thanks for sharing it while we're on. First of all, it was expected already yesterday in the morning, then it was postponed, then the United States put pressure on Israel, so now finally that is materializing. And of course, that's good news because humanitarian aid needs to go into the civilians. What Israel is concerned about is whether it falls in the hands of Hamas. But if it goes to the civilians, then of course that's very, very good news. I doubt, however, that Egypt will allow hundreds of thousands of Palestinians
Okay, I'm just going to fill you in on the information I get, Jotam, as I'm getting it. So what I'm being told is that the Egyptians are saying, as far as they're concerned, it's open, and it is not their fault that people are not coming in. In other words, it's on the Gazan side that they're not being let out and they're not being let in. That's what they're saying as of literally this minute.
Okay, well, that also makes sense because Hamas has no interest in letting the civilians out. In fact, we heard Ismail Haniyeh, the political leader of Hamas, from his comfortable chair in Qatar, saying, you shouldn't leave, you should stay, which is basically a death sentence, saying just stay with Hamas and a lot of you will get killed. So no, Hamas is probably, that's what we assume, that they're stopping them, they're trying to stop them from leaving.
Let me interrupt you to ask you about this, because people may just think they're mishearing, because what you're saying is so unbelievably difficult to understand that I think some people may think, what did that guy standing there in Tel Aviv, what did he say? What? So let's just delve into this a little bit. So we have Israel absolutely desperate to and determined to recover those hostages who've been stolen. We think it's 199 people kidnapped, forced to be taken into Gaza. And Israel will do, it seems, absolutely anything to get these people out alive, or if the worst has happened, to get their bodies out and get them back to Israel. They're trying to save their lives. And you have just said that Hamas is completely the opposite and has no interest really in saving the lives of its own citizens at all, to the point that Egypt is saying, as of a few minutes ago, our border's open. Where are they? They're not letting them in from the other side. And you're saying, yeah, sure, Hamas aren't letting them in because they don't want to save their lives. In fact, they want them to die as part of the kind of holy war and make martyrs of them. They'd rather they died than lived. Is that true?
It's very morbid, but listen, unfortunately, this is the only conclusion that you can draw from the statements coming from Hamas. If Hamas cared about the civilians, they would say, great, if Egypt is willing to take 2 million civilians for X amount of time, then we will fight Israel as the soldiers that we think we are, and then we'll have a fair fight without civilians getting killed. But of course, Hamas doesn't want that because Hamas will be obliterated within a day if it's just between Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Israeli soldiers. That is such an uneven match because Israel is one of the strongest militaries in the world. So of course, they have no interest in that. What they want is the world to forget the mass murder, the rape, the slitting of the throats of babies. They want the world to forget that. And they want the narrative and the sympathy to be with the Palestinians. And the only way they can get sympathy is to see the civilian death toll rise as much as possible until people absolutely forget what was the war even about. Why is Israel continuing to kill civilians? That's number one. And number two, if you want to save your life as a member of Hamas, the best way you can do that is to hide behind civilians. That's the best solution you have. And again, I'm saying this because they have no regard for human life. If they took the money they get, the millions of dollars they get from Qatar, and they actually cared about the civilians, they wouldn't spend it on all their military equipment. They would actually give it to the people who are in need. So again, I can draw conclusions from the many, many things that we've seen, the face of Hamas, which is basically Islamic State, just worse. And I'm not just repeating what the prime minister or what the defense minister is saying. I'm saying this because I've heard people telling me what they've seen. So we're seeing the face of Hamas now. And I think the world is seeing the face of Hamas. And again, I'm absolutely devastated that children in Gaza are being killed. I don't think anyone would like that. But as Israel is saying, how can we stand by and let Hamas get away with this? We need to eradicate them. And we cannot control 2 million people. We cannot take them all in a day and send them to Sinai. If we could, we would, but they can't.